here. I'm going to give you, if you'll do it in the twilight, so it'll get dark while you're on air, 10 minutes, uninterrupted. Tell us about Paul Ryan. Tell us about Kolob. I mean, tell us what you were telling me before we went live on air. Because, I mean, I'm being mean to Zeitgeist. I might as well be mean to children of Kolob right now.
All right. You have, first of all, Mitt Romney, right, the Republican candidate. And anybody can see he's a hedge fund hyena. He's a corporate raider. He's an asset stripper. I think the actual technical term for Mitt Romney is asset stripper. In other words, you buy companies, you sell off the pieces, you wreck them, you load them with debt, then they go bankrupt and you walk away with these huge sums of money. And this is facilitated by the U.S. tax code, because the money that Romney got in this Bain Capital phase, which is from the early 80s, it's about 20 years. It's from about 1983, 84 to 2002. He got a sweetheart tax rate on that through something called carried interest. And carried interest says it's a capital gain. It's carried interest. So 15% in many cases, right? Whereas if he'd been, paying tax on wages, right, would be 35% for a lot of that time, different wage rates. So that's Romney. Now, he does represent this Mormon political operation, right? There's a tremendous amount to be said about the Mormons. It's a church that was founded as a separate country. It's not American. It's not Christian. It's not Judaism. It's not Islam. It's none of those. And it's not American. It's not the United States of America. It was to create an entity, a separate country, eventually called Deseret, which would be a power set apart from and hostile to the United States. And if you read the Joseph Smith White Horse prophecy, what he has in there in the early 1830s is he says the white horse of Mormonism is going to combine with the red horse, the British, the London banks, against the pale horse, the United States. So you get it's a pincers where between the British Empire and the Mormons out there in the Great Basin, the United States is going to be crushed. Now, then this is inherent in it from the beginning. It's a theocracy. They say self-government under a constitution is blasphemy. It's inherently impossible. God doesn't want it, right? We want to have a theocracy. It's very similar to Al-Qaeda, right? Al-Qaeda's rap is every government in the Arab world is illegitimate because it's not the caliphate, because it's not the kingdom of God on earth. Well, similarly with the Mormons. So eventually they create this Deseret entity, and in 1857, over the issue of polygamy, right, because Brigham Young had 70 wives or 80 wives, Joseph Smith between 35 and 85 wives, thereabouts. Nobody else in all of Western civilization has polygamy, but they do. It's a very peculiar reading of the, not even of the Bible, but of their own particular texts.
Well, it sounds like hell to me.
Yeah, many jokes have been made about this, right? Why would you want this? So, but there are reasons. In other words, this is a system of brutal crushing of women. You want to talk about war on women? Look at Joseph Smith and Brigham Young. Now, Romney belongs to the ultra elite of this church, not through the Romney family so much, but through the Pratt family. Romney, as he tells you in his autobiographies, campaign autobiographies, ghost-written usually, Romney wants to tell you his great-great-grandfather was Parley P. Pratt. Parley Pratt. And this was, after Joseph Smith and Brigham Young, probably the most important and most popular among the Mormons leader. He became a polygamist. He went to Britain with Brigham Young. One of the things I think you have to grasp about the Mormons is as that prophecy indicates, the Mormons understand themselves as an ally of the British Empire against the United States. In other words, you got the British fleet off the East Coast, and out in the Intermountain West, you've got this theocratic power which is opposed to the United States, Deseret, ultimately Brigham Young. In 1857, he takes it all the way, and he basically says, I'm seceding. I'm an independent country. And the idea was, this is timed. They've obviously got access to British intelligence at a very high level, and they figure that the bleeding Kansas, the John Brown's raid and similar things, are going to turn into a civil war in 1858 or 1859. So they decide to get the ball rolling, which they actually did. And President Buchanan had to send an army, 1/3 of the U.S. Army, to try to reestablish federal authority in Utah. This is a very interesting point. The first time a U.S. president ever said the word terrorism is the proclamation of President James Buchanan in 1857, where he says, the Mormons have created a strange system of terrorism out there in the Great Basin. They are in a state of insurrection, and I'm sending 3,000 troops or whatever he had, 1/3 of everything that he had, out there to reestablish federal authority. So this is done in close cooperation with the British. And
Webster, I'm going to have you back about this, because here's the deal. I have a lot of Mormon listeners who seem like good, hardworking, smart people who want freedom.
They may be.
Well, yeah. And I got to be honest with you. I have not had time to research this. I'm going to look into what you're saying, because it's wild. British intelligence, the Mormons. Yeah. I mean, I knew about the troops being sent out west and all this stuff. All I know is Romney was a deacon or a bishop or whatever it was a bishop?
Bishop.
Yeah, Bishop
Romney.
So my whole issue is, would he be, loyal to the republic or to his religion? But you go into that, who is Obama? I mean, these guys are puppets to begin with. And so my whole issue is, if Mitt Romney is a Mormon, that's more just from his family and a structure that helped launch him. All of his real actions is a minion to the global bankers.
Yes, but, let's go back to Obama. With Obama, we pointed out that he was a creature of this intelligence community foundation world. In other words, where the CIA meets the foundations, right? The world of counterinsurgency, the world of social control. And remember the famous speech with Obama where he says, there are these bitter clingers who cling to religion and guns and anti-trade, and they don't like globalization, and they cling to not liking people that are different from them. So they're racist. Okay. So you could see that Obama had an animus against large parts of the American people, right? Because this is the rap. Right, American people, reactionary, chauvinist, racist, no good. That's sort of a left-oligarch point of view. But now, the Mormon rap is the United States is guilty of the greatest crime in the history of the world. The United States allowed the killing of Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith and Parley Pratt. In the case of Parley Pratt, the story is he went to essentially, he got mixed up with a family in Arkansas, right? Parley Pratt already had 11 wives. He decided he wanted to have 12 wives. So he takes the wife of the woman from Arkansas. The husband runs after him and kills Parley Pratt, the number 2 or 3 Mormon in the world. The Arkansas court refuses to convict Parley Pratt. And at that point, when the Mormons secede in 1857 under Brigham Young, there's this group, it's called the Baker Fancher Party. It's 150 or so people from Arkansas who are just trying to go to California. They're on the old Spanish Trail. They're leaving Utah. They're headed to California. And it's pretty clear Brigham Young gives the order, and they're massacred. It's the biggest massacre in U.S. history other than 9/11 or Oklahoma City. Comes in third. And for many years, more than a century, it was number 1. So there's a tremendous animus of hatred. I can mention one thing, the so-called oath of vengeance. Right? Under Brigham Young was put into the liturgy, what they call the temple endowment of the Mormon Church, a proposition saying, I promise, and I'm paraphrasing now, to exact revenge on the United States of America and its people for what they did to Joseph Smith and Hiram Smith. And I will preached this to my children for 4 generations. Well, this was only removed from the liturgy in the late 1920s, about 1927. Plenty of time for George Romney, the father of Mitt, to have pledged the oath of vengeance against the United States. So I'm saying, you look at Obama, he's somebody who comes in with an animus against significant parts of the American people. It's not a good idea, huh?
Well, let me ask you this. Are you saying, I mean, they're all similar puppets, though. You're saying go for Obama?
I'm saying I did everything I could to educate people about Obama when they didn't know. Now, and you've done it too, people who want to know about Obama can find out, right? They can look at these films. I wrote 2 books. I got nothing to add on Obama, but I'm telling you, people don't know the stuff that I'm finding about Romney and the Mormons, and I think this is equally scary, maybe worse, because this is now a blood feud. This is a vendetta, and what role this plays.
But what about the Mormon prophecy that a Mormon will become president and save the republic when it hangs by a thread?
That's called a coup. That's called a coup d'etat. That's the Joseph Smith. This is the white horse prophecy once again. It's the one that I was citing, right? Where the white horse of the Mormons and the red horse of the British gang up and take over the pale horse of the United States. That the United States is the bringer of death. I think that's too much. That's not accurate, right? That's not historically, that's not the story. There's part of it, but that's not the whole thing. The white horse prophecy goes, at some time in the future, the Constitution will hang by a thread, and the Mormons, the saints, will take over the government with a theocracy, and they will then rule the world. And Joseph Smith created a secret council of 50, which is not the quorum of 12. In other words, it's not a Mormon church organization. It's a political organizing committee. It's like a strike committee, except it's a committee to take over the United States and then the world, as he said, right? He says, I'm going to have
but I'll say this. They now teach Romans 13 in churches, so I think all the Catholics and Baptists and everybody, when Mitt Romney is sworn in as president, will kneel to Mitt Romney and pledge to do whatever he says because it's of the Lord.
I don't think so. I mean, the difference is, see, some churches are old, sedate, sated, mainstream, whatever you want to call them. Most of the Christian churches would say, render unto Caesar what is Caesar and unto God what is God. The Mormons say, no, we want the kingdom of God. We want a theocracy.
Hey, Webster, I was being sarcastic. Obviously, the whole Bible is about standing up against corruption in government. I was just making a joke at people that tell me, do whatever government says because it's of the Lord. Those people might as well go to the devil. Webster, incredible hour, 20-plus minute interview. Tarpley.net. Thank you so much for the time.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Amazing. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was a marathon interview here on Infowars.